The silk of my sleeve tore against the splintered wood of the ancestral altar as I flung myself forward, my scream lost in the roar of fire that was not there. I gasped, choking on clean, crisp air, the scent of sandalwood and morning incense replacing the acrid smoke of my funeral pyre. My palms were flat against the cool, polished floor of the main hall. The floor of the main hall, not the scorched earth of the courtyard where I had drawn my last, humiliated breath. I was on my knees before the entire clan. Elder Chen's voice, sharp as a winter gale, cut through the ringing in my ears. Lingwei, your recklessness has brought shame upon the House of Ling. To lose the imperial trade contract to the Zhao family is a failure of monumental proportion. You, as the acting head of foreign affairs, have proven yourself incompetent. We have no choice but to request the matriarch to reconsider your position. I looked up. There he was. Elder Chen, his face a mask of pious condemnation. My cousin Ling Jie stood beside him, her eyes demurely cast down, but I could see the tiny, satisfied curl at the corner of her mouth. And my mother, the matriarch, sat upon the great rosewood chair, her face an unreadable porcelain mask. I remembered this day, the day my world began its slow, agonizing collapse. The day they stripped me of my duties, citing my emotional instability after my betrothed, General Han, had broken our engagement to marry Ling Jie. I had been a fool. I had raged. I had cried. I had pleaded. But I had never seen the truth. No. I breathed, the word a dry rasp. My voice was not the hysterical shriek of my memory. It was quiet, trembling with a shock that had nothing to do with their accusations. Elder Chen frowned. I beg your pardon? No, I said again, louder this time, as I struggled to my feet. My legs were weak, my hands shaking. But the clarity was a blinding light in my skull. I was not the weeping, broken woman of before. I had just lived through a decade of hell. 10 years of seeing my family destroyed, one by one. 10 years of watching Ling Jie's schemes unfold, her true face a venomous serpent beneath a mask of sweet piety. 10 years of misery, ending with me being accused of treason, stripped of my title, and burned alive in a public square by the very emperor I had served loyally. And in those final moments, a vision had come to me, a cosmic joke. It was the prophecy I'd had as a girl. A moment of foresight I had dismissed as a fever dream. I had seen them, my clan, all of them, dead in a dozen different ways. Illusions I had called them, fanciful horrors, until I watched them all come true. Ling Jie was poisoned by her own hand in a plot gone wrong. Elder Chen was beheaded for his corruption, his head rolling in the dirt of the same square where I would later die. My mother took her own life when our house was seized, her blood painting the white walls of her private chambers red. I had seen it all, a prophecy of doom, and I had been powerless to stop it, but now I was here. My heart hammered against my ribs. They were all alive. My mother was staring at me, her eyes finally showing a flicker of irritation. Lingwei, your insolence knows no bounds. You will not speak out of turn. Mother, I said, my voice gaining a strength that startled even me. I turned my gaze from her to Elder Chen, then to Ling Jie. I knew what was coming. They would present the doctored ledgers, the forged letters from the Imperial Trade Ministry, the evidence of my incompetence that was, in reality, Ling Jie's handiwork. But in my other life, I had been too distraught over Han's betrayal to see the trap being laid. I had the ledgers in my memory. Every single fudged number. And the misplaced love token from Zhao Xian, Ling Jie's co-conspirator and the emperor's favored minister, that was hidden in the side compartment of the blue lacquered box in my study. I am not speaking out of turn, I said, bowing my head, a show of false humility. I am trying to save this house from a plot that will see us all destroyed within the decade. Silence. It was so absolute, I could hear the drip of the water clock in the corner. Elder Chen's face purpled. How dare you? You are the one who has brought us to the brink of ruin, and you speak of plots. The plot is yours, Elder Chen, I said, lifting my head. I met his gaze, and I saw a flicker of panic there. Good. Or should I say, it belongs to the one who truly holds your leash. All eyes turned to Elder Chen. He sputtered, his hands trembling. She is hysterical. The matriarch, you cannot allow this slander. Ling Jie stepped forward, her voice a gentle, placating melody. Cousin, we all understand you are upset about General Han, but to make wild accusations against our esteemed elder. She shook her head, her eyes glistening with fabricated sympathy. It is beneath you. Please, let us handle this with grace. Your health is clearly suffering. There it was, the same sweet poison that had dripped into my ear for years. The gentle maneuvering of others to see me as unstable, unreliable. But now I could see the threads. In my memory, she would have succeeded. I would have been confined to my quarters, the ledgers would have been presented in my absence, and my fate would have been sealed. But I was not the same woman. My health, I said, my voice flat, is better than it has ever been. This instability you speak of, cousin, is merely the clarity of a woman who has had her eyes opened. I turned to my mother, matriarch. May I have the opportunity to defend myself against these charges? Privately, before you make a decision that will affect the future of our entire clan. The matriarch's eyes narrowed. She was shrewd, my mother. Cold, but shrewd. And the suggestion of a private audience was a power move she understood. It spoke of secrets, of leverage. It was the language of court politics, a language I had only learned to speak fluently in the bitter years I had just lived through. Very well, she said, her voice clipped. The rest of you leave us. Elder Chen Ling Jie, you will wait in the antechamber. The clatter of feet and the rustle of silk filled the hall as the other members and servants filed out. As the heavy doors slid shut, I was alone with my mother. The air was thick with unspoken questions. She did not offer me a seat. Speak, she commanded. And be quick. I have little patience for theatrics. I took a deep breath. How to explain the impossible I couldn't. So I decided not to try. I would show her. I know about the blue box in my study, I said, keeping my voice low and steady. The one with the hidden compartment in the bottom. You had it made for me when I turned 16 as a gift, so it is not a secret to you. Open it. In the compartment, you will find a jade hairpin. It is not mine. My mother's face remained impassive, but she had gone still. And what is this hairpin to me? It is a token of affection, I said. From Zhao Xian. Do you know why he would give a token of affection to his own daughter? A flicker of movement. Her hand clenched the armrest of her chair. Zhao Xian has no daughter. He does not, I agreed. But the hairpin is a gift he gave to the woman he conspired with, a woman who holds a position of influence in this clan. A woman who told him to send his daughter, Zhao Lian, to the capital to befriend the princess. The same scheme that was launched 2 months ago. It was a guess, based on my knowledge of the future. But I saw the blood drain from my mother's face. It was true. Ling Wei, the accusations you are making are treasonous, she whispered, her voice barely a whisper. You are accusing an elder of my court and the Minister of Rights. I am accusing no one, I said. I am merely presenting you with a fact. Go and verify it. The hairpin is there. If I am wrong, I will accept any punishment you see fit. But if I am right, I let the sentence hang in the air. Then you will understand that my incompetence is a fabricated charge, designed to remove me from power so that our clan's most dangerous secrets can be delivered into the hands of our enemies. My mother stared at me for a long, agonizing moment. Then, slowly, she rose from her chair. She walked to the door, called for a trusted maid, and gave her a whispered instruction. The maid scurried off toward my quarters. We waited in suffocating silence. 5 minutes. 10. Then, the maid returned. She placed a small, blue lacquered box on the table in front of my mother. She opened the lid, pressed a hidden latch, and the bottom panel slid open. There, nestled on a bed of dark silk, was a jade hairpin, carved with the symbol of a blooming plum blossom. The personal emblem of Zhao Xian. My mother's face went pale. She picked up the hairpin, her fingers trembling. She knew the symbolism. The plum blossom was Zhao Xian's private mark, a detail few knew. The fact that such a token was hidden in my study meant only one of two things. I was in league with him, or I had been set up. Her gaze snapped to me, sharp and searching. I met her eyes without flinching. I was not the daughter she knew. I was hard, forged in a fire she could not imagine. "How did you know about this?" she asked, her voice a low, dangerous whisper. "It does not matter, mother," I said. "What matters is that the ledgers Ling Jie and Elder Chen will present to you are forgeries. They will show I lost the trade contract. In truth, I secured it. Ling Jie had my correspondence with the imperial minister intercepted and replaced with letters of withdrawal. Ask the minister discreetly. He will confirm the truth." My mother sat back down, her hand still gripping the hairpin. The air in the room had shifted. I could feel her respect for me growing, replacing the frustration. She was a woman of power, and she recognized a powerful move when she saw one. She had just witnessed her daughter, the weeping, heartbroken girl, transform into a political player of immense cunning. She did not know how, but she recognized the result. The door slid open again, and the matriarch's voice was ice. "Elder Chen, Ling Jie, you may return." When they walked in, they were both smiling. They expected to see a broken girl being led away. Instead, they found the matriarch seated, and I standing beside her, my expression serene. Elder Chen's smile faltered. Ling Jie's eyes darted nervously between us. "Elder Chen," my mother said, her voice carrying the full weight of her authority. "I have reviewed the complaint you filed against my daughter. Upon further investigation, I have found the charges of incompetence to be unfounded. The imperial minister confirmed this morning that the contract was, in fact, secured, and the letters of withdrawal were forgeries." Elder Chen's face went white. That is impossible. The ledgers are fabrication," my mother said, her voice sharp as a blade. "The numbers do not match the official records of the ministry." She stood up. "Ling Jie." My cousin flinched, her saccharine smile gone, replaced by a look of pure terror. "Matriarch. The jade hairpin in Ling Wei's study is a token of affection from Zhao Xian," my mother said, her words clipped and precise. "How did it come to be there?" Ling Jie's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. I have no idea. Perhaps someone planted it to slander her. Yes, that must be it." She was flailing. In my other life, I had been the one flailing. Now, I watched with a cold, detached satisfaction. I saw the moment she realized she had lost. She looked to Elder Chen for help, but he was too busy sweating, his own life suddenly flashing before his eyes. "I will be investigating this matter thoroughly," my mother continued. "In the meantime, Ling Wei's position is restored. Furthermore, I am appointing her as my personal advisor for all clan affairs. Ling Jie, you are confined to your quarters until this matter is resolved. Elder Chen, you will report to the accounting office first thing tomorrow morning for a full audit." It was a stunning reversal. A total victory. As Ling Jie was led away, her face contorted with a hatred she could no longer hide, I felt a surge of triumph. And yet, the victory was hollow. I had averted one doom. One tiny thread in the tapestry of our fate. The night was quiet. I stood on the balcony of my pavilion, looking out at the moon. I had saved my position. I had unmasked my enemies. But as I looked at the sleeping compound below, a familiar dread coiled in my stomach. The visions. The fire. My mother's blood on the white walls. Ling Jie's poison body. They were all still there, shimmering on the edge of my mind, waiting. I had prevented my own fall from power, but that was just the first step. Ling Jie would not be defeated so easily. Elder Chen would find new allies. And Zhao Xian, in the capital, had already set the wheels of his grand scheme in motion. The emperor was being manipulated, the borders were weakening, and the whispers of rebellion were growing louder. The dooms I had foreseen were not just the fall of a single woman, but the annihilation of my entire bloodline. I had averted one tiny death. There were so many more to come. A decade of misery was a long time, but it was nothing compared to the eternity of watching my family die again. This time, I would not be a passive observer. This time, I was not just trying to survive. I was going to take the head of every snake that threatened my clan one by one. My fingers tightened on the railing. A cold wind blew, rustling the plum blossoms in the garden below. It was the same wind from my dream, the one that had carried the ash of my funeral pyre. But I was no longer ash. I was a spark, and I was ready to burn the whole corrupt world down to save what was mine. The game had only just begun. The game for the House of Ling, and for my very soul. The silk of my sleeve tore against the splintered wood of the ancestral altar as I flung myself forward, my scream lost in the roar of fire that was not there. I gasped, choking on clean, crisp air. The scent of sandalwood and morning incense replaced the acrid smoke of my funeral pyre. My palms were flat against the cool, polished floor of the main hall. Not the scorched earth of the courtyard where I had drawn my last, humiliated breath. I was on my knees before the entire clan. Elder Chen's voice cut through the ringing in my ears like a blade. Lingwei, your recklessness has brought shame upon the House of Ling. To lose the imperial trade contract to the Zhao family is a failure of monumental proportion. We have no choice but to request the matriarch to reconsider your position. I looked up. There he stood, Elder Chen, his face a mask of pious condemnation. My cousin Ling Jie stood beside him, her eyes demurely cast downward. But I saw it, the tiny, satisfied curl at the corner of her mouth. My mother, the matriarch, sat upon the great rosewood chair, her face an unreadable porcelain mask. I remembered this day. The day my world began its slow, agonizing collapse. The day they stripped me of my duties, citing my emotional instability, after General Han broke our engagement to marry Ling Jie. I had been a fool. I had raged. I had cried. I had pleaded. But I had never seen the truth. No, I breathed. The word a dry rasp. Elder Chen frowned. I beg your pardon, no, I said again, louder now, as I struggled to my feet. My legs were weak, my hands trembling, but clarity burned like a blinding light in my skull. I was not the weeping, broken woman of before. I had just lived through a decade of hell. 10 years of watching my family destroyed, one by one. 10 years of watching Ling Jie's schemes unfold, her true face a venomous serpent beneath a mask of sweet piety. 10 years of misery, ending with me accused of treason, stripped of my title, and burned alive in the public square. And in those final moments, a vision had come to me. The prophecy I'd had as a girl, a moment of foresight I had dismissed as a fever dream. I had seen them, my clan, all of them, dead in a dozen different ways. Illusions, I had called them. Fanciful horrors, until I watched them all come true. Ling Jie poisoned by her own hand. Elder Chen beheaded for corruption, his head rolling in the same dirt where I would later die. My mother taking her own life when our house was seized, her blood painting the white walls of her private chambers red. I had seen it all, a prophecy of doom, and I had been powerless to stop it. But now I was here. My mother was staring at me, irritation flickering in her eyes. Lingwei, your insolence knows no bounds. You will not speak out of turn. Mother. My voice gained a strength that startled even me. I turned from her to Elder Chen, then to Ling Jie. I knew what was coming. The doctored ledgers. The forged letters from the Imperial Trade Ministry. The evidence of my incompetence that was, in truth, Ling Jie's handiwork. In my other life, I had been too distraught over Han's betrayal to see the trap being laid. But I remembered everything now. Every single fudged number. And the misplaced love token from Zhao Xian, Ling Jie's co-conspirator and the Emperor's favored minister. It was hidden in the side compartment of the blue lacquered box in my study. I am not speaking out of turn, I said, bowing my head in false humility. I am trying to save this house from a plot that will see us all destroyed within the decade. Silence fell so absolute I could hear the water clock dripping in the corner. Elder Chen's face purpled. How dare you? You are the one who has brought us to the brink of ruin. The plot is yours, Elder Chen. I lifted my head and met his gaze. I saw panic flicker there.
Good.
Or should I say, it belongs to the one who truly holds your leash. Ling Jie stepped forward, her voice a gentle, placating melody. Cousin, we all understand you are upset about General Han, but to make wild accusations against our esteemed elder. She shook her head, eyes glistening with fabricated sympathy. It is beneath you. Your health is clearly suffering. There it was. The same sweet poison that had dripped into my ear for years. The gentle maneuvering to paint me as unstable. In my memory, she had succeeded. I would have been confined to my quarters, the ledgers presented in my absence, my fate sealed. But I was not the same woman. My health, I said flatly, is better than it has ever been. This instability you speak of is merely the clarity of a woman who has had her eyes opened. I turned to my mother, matriarch. May I have the opportunity to defend myself privately, before you make a decision that will affect the future of our entire clan? The matriarch's eyes narrowed. She was shrewd, my mother. Cold, but shrewd. The suggestion of a private audience was a power move she understood. It spoke of secrets, of leverage. It was the language of court politics, a language I had only learned to speak fluently in the bitter years I had just lived through.
Very well, she said.
The rest of you leave us. Elder Chun Lingjie, you will wait in the antechamber. The heavy doors slid shut, and I was alone with my mother. The air was thick with unspoken questions. She did not offer me a seat. Speak, she commanded. And be quick. I took a deep breath. How to explain the impossible I couldn't. So I decided to show her instead. I know about the blue box in my study, I said, keeping my voice low and steady. The one with the hidden compartment in the bottom. You had it made for me when I turned 16. Open it. In the compartment you will find a jade hairpin. It is not mine. My mother's face remained impassive, but she had gone still. And what is this hairpin to me? It is a token, I said. From Zhao Xian. Do you know why he would give a token of affection to his own daughter? Her hand clenched the armrest. Zhao Xian has no daughter. He does not. But the hairpin is a gift he gave to the woman he conspired with. A woman who holds influence in this clan. A woman who told him to send his daughter, Zhao Lian, to the capital to befriend the princess. The same scheme launched 2 months ago. I saw the blood drain from my mother's face. It was true, Lingwei, you are accusing an elder of my court. I am accusing no one. I am presenting you with the fact. Go and verify it. The hairpin is there. If I am wrong, I will accept any punishment you see fit. But if I am right, I let the sentence hang. Then you will understand that my incompetence is a fabricated charge, designed to remove me from power so that our clan's secrets can be delivered to our enemies. My mother stared at me for a long, agonizing moment. Then she rose, walked to the door, and called for her trusted maid. She gave a whispered instruction. The maid scurried toward my quarters. We waited in suffocating silence. 5 minutes.
10.
The maid returned. She placed the small blue lacquered box on the table. My mother opened the lid, pressed a hidden latch, and the bottom panel slid open. There, nestled on dark silk, was a jade hairpin carved with a blooming plum blossom. The personal emblem of Zhao Xian. My mother picked it up. Her fingers trembled. She knew the symbolism. The plum blossom was Zhao Xian's private mark, a detail few knew. The fact that such a token was hidden in my study meant only one of two things. I was in league with him, or I had been set up. Her gaze snapped to me. I met her eyes without flinching. I was not the daughter she knew. I was forged in a fire she could not imagine. How did you know about this? She whispered. It does not matter, mother. What matters is that the ledgers Lingjie and Elder Chen will present to you are forgeries. They will show I lost the trade contract. In truth, I secured it. Lingjie had my correspondence with the imperial minister intercepted and replaced with letters of withdrawal. Ask the minister discreetly. He will confirm the truth. My mother sat back down, still gripping the hairpin. I could feel her respect growing, replacing the frustration. She recognized a powerful move when she saw one. Her weeping, heartbroken daughter had transformed into a player of immense cunning. The doors slid open. My mother's voice was ice. Elder Chun, Lingjie, you may return. They walked in smiling. They expected to see a broken girl being led away. Instead, They found the matriarch seated, and I standing beside her, serene. Elder Chen's smile faltered. Ling Jie's eyes darted between us. Elder Chen, my mother said, her voice carrying full authority. Upon further investigation, I have found the charges of incompetence unfounded. The imperial minister confirmed this morning that the contract was, in fact, secured. The letters of withdrawal were forgeries. Elder Chen went white. That is impossible. The ledgers are a fabrication. The numbers do not match official ministry records. She stood up. Ling Jie. My cousin flinched, her saccharine smile replaced by terror. Matriarch. The jade hairpin in Ling Wei's study. How did it come to be there? Ling Jie's mouth opened and closed like a landed fish. I have no idea. Someone planted it to slander her. That must be it. She was flailing. In my other life, I had been the one flailing. Now I watched with cold satisfaction. I will be investigating this matter thoroughly, my mother continued. In the meantime, Ling Wei's position is restored. I am appointing her as my personal advisor for all clan affairs. Ling Jie, you are confined to your quarters until this matter is resolved. Elder Chen, you will report to the accounting office tomorrow morning for a full audit. A stunning reversal. Total victory. As Ling Jie was led away, her face contorted with hatred, she could no longer hide. I felt a surge of triumph, but the victory was hollow. I had averted one doom. One tiny thread in the tapestry of our fate. That night, I stood on the balcony of my pavilion, looking at the moon. I had saved my position. I had unmasked my enemies. But dread coiled in my stomach. The visions remained. The fire, my mother's blood on white walls, Ling Jie's poisoned body. They shimmered at the edge of my mind, waiting. I had prevented my own fall. But Ling Jie would not be defeated so easily. Elder Chen would find new allies. And Zhao Xian in the capital had already set the wheels of his grand scheme in motion. The emperor was being manipulated. Borders were weakening. Whispers of rebellion grew louder. The dooms I had foreseen were not just the fall of one woman. They were the annihilation of my entire bloodline. I had averted one tiny death. There were so many more to come. My fingers tightened on the railing. A cold wind rustled the plum blossoms below. It was the same wind from my dream, the one that carried the ash of my funeral pyre. But I was no longer ash. I was a spark. A door slid open behind me. I turned to see my personal maid, Mei, her face pale and drawn. Lady Ling, she whispered. Forgive my intrusion. But a message has arrived from the capital. The princess has invited Ling Jie to court. She leaves at dawn. I went still. This had not happened in my other life. Ling Jie's confinement should have prevented this invitation from reaching her. Unless someone in the capital had already moved to countermeet, the wind howled through the plum trees. I smiled, cold and sharp. Prepare my carriage, I said. If my cousin is going to court, then I will be right behind her. I had not survived a decade of hell to lose this first battle. And I was just beginning to learn how to win the war. The carriage wheels churned the muddy road as we raced toward the capital, the jolt of every rut sending a sharp pang through my spine. I had not slept. I could not. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ling Jie's face twisted in that final moment before the guards dragged her away, a mask of hatred I had not fully appreciated in my previous life. She was cornered now, but a cornered snake strikes with the most venom. Mei sat across from me, her small hands clutched tightly around a bundle of my travel robes. She had served me since childhood, and in my other life, she had died trying to protect me, thrown from the palace walls when she refused to testify against me. I reached out and placed my hand over hers. Lady Ling, she looked up, confused by my sudden tenderness. Nothing, I said, pulling back. Tell me again what the messenger said. She nodded, her brow furrowed. He arrived just after midnight. A rider from Princess Yujing's personal household. The princess has summoned all eligible daughters of noble houses to a plum blossom festival at the Spring Pavilion. Lady Ling Jie's name was specifically mentioned. Specifically mentioned, I repeated. That was not an accident. In my previous life, the festival had occurred 3 months later, after Ling Jie had already established herself at court. Someone had accelerated the timeline. Someone who knew I had moved against them. Zhao Xian, his name burned in my chest like a live coal. The emperor's favored minister, the architect of my family's destruction. I had exposed his token and his connection to Ling Jie, but I had not yet exposed him. He was still safe in the capital, still pulling strings, still watching. He had seen Ling Jie's confinement and acted instantly, protecting his investment before it could be liquidated. I should have anticipated this. The dawn broke gray and cold as we passed through the gates of the capital. The city was waking, vendors setting up their stalls, the smell of frying cakes and steaming tea drifting through the narrow streets. But I saw none of it. My mind was already 3 steps ahead, trying to reconstruct a game I had only ever lost before. The spring pavilion rose from the eastern hills like a jewel box carved from jade. Its tiered roofs gleamed with morning frost, and the plum blossoms that gave the festival its name were already in full, riotous bloom. Pink and white petals carpeting the stone paths, perfuming the air so thickly it was almost cloying. I arrived to find the courtyard already crowded with silk-clad daughters of the nobility, their maids trailing behind them like colorful shadows. They whispered behind their sleeves, their eyes darting to the main pavilion, where Princess Yujing sat enthroned on a raised dais, her face hidden behind a veil of translucent gauze. I recognized her from my previous life, a spoiled, capricious girl who delighted in toying with lesser nobles like a cat with mice. She had been easily manipulated by Ling Jie's flattery. And there, already seated at the princess's left hand, was my cousin. Ling Jie had not just arrived. She had won. I felt the blood drain from my face. Her confinement had been absolute. My mother's decree was law within our compound. There was no way she could have left without permission. Unless someone had broken the decree. Unless someone in my own household had betrayed me. May's sharp intake of breath confirmed my suspicion. I turned to find the source of her shock, and there, standing at Ling Jie's shoulder, like a loyal hound, was Elder Chen. His face was composed, smug even, as he nodded to the princess in deference. Elder Chen had not been under confinement. He had been under audit, and apparently the audit had yielded no damaging results. He was free, and he had delivered Ling Jie to the capital that I had been outmaneuvered. In my other life, I would have felt this defeat like a physical blow. I would have stumbled, my carefully constructed composure crumbling. But I had already died once. The taste of that final breath still lingered in my throat. This humiliation was nothing compared to ash and fire. I smoothed my robes and stepped into the courtyard, my expression serene. Lady Lingwei of the House of Ling, the herald announced, his voice ringing across the garden. Daughter of the matriarch, first advisor to the clan. A ripple of whispers moved through the assembled ladies. I was supposed to be in disgrace. They had heard the rumors, the lost contract, the broken engagement, the confinement. Yet here I was, announced with full honors. The confusion in their eyes was a weapon, and I wielded it without mercy. I approached the dais and performed the full obeisance, my forehead touching the cool marble floor. This humble daughter greets Her Highness, Princess Yujing. May the plum blossoms bring the princess 100 years of joy. Princess Yujing tilted her head, her veil rustling. Rise, Lady Ling. I was told you were indisposed. I confess, I am surprised to see you well. Her Highness's kindness is boundless, I replied, rising with fluid grace. The rumors of my indisposition were greatly exaggerated. I would not miss the princess's festival for any ailment. My cousin, Lady Ling Jie, can attest to my vigor. I turned to Ling Jie and smiled. Can you not? Cousin Ling Jie's painted lips tightened. She was dressed in robes of deep rose silk that made her look like a plum blossom herself, a calculated choice. Her hair was done in a complicated court style, woven with golden pins. She had been preparing for this invitation long before it arrived. That meant someone in the capital had been corresponding with her despite my mother's orders. Indeed, Ling Jie said, her voice soft and sweet as poisoned honey. Cousin Wei has always been a force of nature. We are all so relieved to see her recovered from her recent distress. The word hung in the air. Distress. the implication of a woman unhinged, broken by a man's abandonment. A stain that would cling to me in the eyes of these court ladies. Princess Yujing's eyes glittered behind her veil. I have heard of the misfortune with General Han. It must have been a terrible blow. It was, I agreed, but a woman's worth is not measured in the men who leave her. The plum blossom does not ask the wind to stay. I gestured to the blooming trees around us. It simply blooms anyway. A murmur of approval rippled through the crowd. I saw several older noblewomen nodding. This was a language they understood, the language of resilience over pining. I had just reframed my loss as strength, and the scales tilted ever so slightly back in my favor. Ling Jie's eyes flashed. She had not expected me to rise so smoothly. But she was clever, and she adapted quickly. "Princess," she said, turning to Yujing, "I have prepared a small entertainment for your highness. A poem, inspired by the blossoms." She began to recite, her voice a melodic flow of classical phrases. It was beautiful, polished, and utterly hollow. The princess applauded politely, as did the gathered ladies. But I saw the moment Ling Jie's performance ended, and the moment she revealed her true purpose. As a token of my devotion, Ling Jie continued, "I have also prepared a gift. A document, presented to Her Highness on behalf of my late father, a record of our clan's contributions to the imperial treasury. I thought Your Highness might find it illuminating." She produced a scroll from her sleeve and handed it to the princess. The room went still. This was not a mere gift. This was a statement. She was reminding the court of the Ling family's wealth and influence, and positioning herself as its rightful heir. But I knew what was on that scroll. I knew because I had seen a similar document in my previous life, a doctored record that inflated our clan's contributions while hiding the funds Ling Jie had been siphoning for years. She was not presenting evidence of our family's loyalty. She was presenting evidence of her own worth, designed to make her indispensable to the princess. I could not let that stand. "Your Highness," I said, stepping forward, "I am moved by my cousin's devotion. But I must caution Your Highness. The records of the imperial treasury are complex, and the document my cousin holds may be incomplete." Ling Jie's head snapped toward me, her composure cracking. "Incomplete? I have been working on this for weeks, cousin. I have the full support of our clan's accounting office. Do you?" I turned to Elder Chen, who had been standing silent at the periphery. "Elder Chen, you have been auditing the accounting office these past days. Tell Her Highness, are the records complete?" Elder Chen paled. He had expected me to remain silent, to accept my defeat. But I had already survived one humiliation at their hands. I would not survive another. "The records are—" He hesitated, his eyes darting to Ling Jie. "They're still being reviewed. A review that began only yesterday," I said smoothly. "Her Highness, this is not a matter of dispute between cousins. This is a matter of proper procedure. The document my cousin presents is not yet certified. I urge Her Highness to await the full audit before accepting it." The princess's gaze shifted between us, intrigued. She loved court drama. It was the only entertainment her sequestered life afforded. And I had just handed her a spectacle. Ling Jie stepped forward, her voice sharp. "Cousin, this is unbecoming. Her Highness asked for a gift, not an audit. Her Highness asked for devotion." I corrected. "And devotion means truth, not pretty words and unverified numbers." The air crackled with tension. The noblewomen watched, their fans frozen mid-wave. Princess Yujing tapped her finger on the armrest, a slow, deliberate rhythm. "Enough," she said at last. "I do not wish to be the cause of discord between cousins. Lady Ling Jie, I will accept your poem as your gift. The document can wait for the audit. Lady Lingwei, you speak with admirable caution. I will remember that." It was not a victory.
It was a draw.
Ling Jie had failed to plant her poison, but I had failed to expose her. And as I stepped back into the crowd, I caught Elder Chen's eyes across the courtyard. He was not looking at me with panic anymore. He was looking at me with something far more dangerous. Calculation. The afternoon wore on with performances and feasting. I played my part, smiling, nodding, offering polite compliments to the ladies who approached me. But my mind was elsewhere. On the spy in my household, on the accelerated timeline, on the unknown moves Zhao Xian was making in the shadows. As the sun began to set, Princess Yujing rose to depart. The noble women lined up to bid her farewell. I waited in my place, watching Ling Jie press her advantage, whispering something in the princess's ear that made the girl's eyes widen with interest. I did not need to hear the words. I knew the shape of them, the promise of secrets, of influence, of wealth. Ling Jie was not deterred by my resistance. She was simply regrouping. Mei appeared at my elbow, her face pale. "Lady Ling," she whispered, "I have news. The servant who allowed Lady Ling Jie to leave, she was found this morning.
Dead.
Drowned in the garden pond." My blood went cold. "A terrible accident," I said flatly. "No doubt." Mei shook her head. The guards said her body had marks on her wrists. "Lady Ling, someone is cleaning up their loose ends." I turned to look at Ling Jie, who was now laughing with the princess, her face a portrait of sweetness. I thought of Elder Chen, standing in the shadows. I thought of Zhao Xian, sitting in his palace, pulling strings I could not yet see. The game was no longer about exposing a forgery or reclaiming a position. The game had become a hunt. And I was no longer the prey. "I told you to prepare the carriage," I said quietly. "We are not returning to the clan compound. We are staying in the capital. Lady Ling, the matriarch, will understand." I gripped Mei's hand firmly. "Or she will not. But I cannot fight this war from a distance. The enemy has come to the capital. So I will meet him here." The plum blossoms fell like snow around us, silent and deadly. In my other life, this was the moment when I lost everything, when I retreated, defeated, and let Ling Jie have the court. But I was no longer the woman who retreated. I was the woman who had already died once, and I was not going to die again. The inn-room was small, cramped, and smelled of boiled cabbage from the kitchen below. I had chosen it deliberately, anonymity over comfort. The capital was a nest of vipers, and I needed to move unseen for the next few days. Mei had unpacked my meager belongings and now stood by the window, peering through the slats at the street below. "Lady Ling," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "there is a man watching the entrance. He has been there since we arrived." I did not rise from the low table where I sat. I had expected surveillance. Zhao Xian's network was vast, and my arrival in the capital would not have gone unnoticed. The question was whether this watcher was Zhao Xian's man, or someone else entirely. "Describe him," I said, pouring myself a cup of cold tea, mid-30s. "Plain robes, but well-made. He is pretending to sell chestnuts from a cart, but his hands are too clean for a vendor. He has looked up at this window 6 times in the past quarter hour." I smiled. Mei had always been observant. In my previous life, I had not valued her enough. I had let her die for me. "Not this time. Leave him," I said. "He is not a threat. He is a message." "A message? Zhao Xian is telling me he knows where I am. He wants me to feel watched, cornered, afraid." I set the cup down. "I will give him the opposite." I rose and crossed to the small writing desk. I dipped a brush in ink and began to write a letter. It was addressed to the Imperial Minister of Rights, a man who had once been my father's friend, before his loyalty had been bought by Zhao Xian's gold. In my previous life, I had never tried to reach him. I had assumed he was lost to us. But watching Ling Jie's accelerated moves, I realized I had made a fundamental error. I had been fighting the battle I remembered, not the battle unfolding before me. The letter was simple. It did not accuse. It did not plead. It merely contained a single line from an old poem my father had once shared with the minister, a verse about the plum blossom that blooms in winter. A private acknowledgement between old friends. A key to a door I had never tried to open, but I sealed it with wax and handed it to Mei. "Have this delivered to the minister's private residence. Not his office. Not his official household. His private residence. Do not use our clan's messenger. Find a street runner who does not know your face." Mei nodded and slipped out. I watched from the window as she vanished into the crowd, the chestnut seller tracking her movement with barely concealed interest. He would follow her. He would see her deliver the letter. But by the time Zhao Xian's men intercepted the message, the minister would already have read it. The next morning, a knock came at my door. I opened it to find a young boy, no more than 12, holding a small wooden box. He thrust it into my hands and ran without a word. Inside was a jade pendant carved with a symbol of a crane, the minister's personal seal, a return invitation. I dressed in the plainest robes I owned and slipped out through the inn's back entrance. The chestnut seller was still at his post out front, oblivious to my departure. I wound through the narrow alleys of the capital, past fishmongers and silk vendors, until I reached a quiet street lined with elegant residences. The minister's private home was modest, a deliberate choice for a man who had risen through the ranks by appearing incorruptible. He received me in his study, a room lined with scrolls and the scent of aged paper. He was older now than I remembered, his hair streaked with silver, his eyes tired and wary. "Lady Lingwei," he said, gesturing for me to sit. "You have your father's boldness. I did not expect to hear from you after what happened with the trade contract." "Then you know what happened," I said, settling onto the cushion across from him. "You know the contract was secured, not lost." He was silent for a long moment. Then he nodded slowly. "I knew. I was told to stay silent." "By Zhao Xian." "By Zhao Xian," he confirmed. "And by my own fear." He leaned forward, his voice dropping. "Your father was my closest friend. I watched him die, not from illness, not from age, but from the slow poison of court politics. I promised myself I would not suffer the same fate. So when Zhao Xian came to me with his threats and his bribes, I chose to live." I understood. In my previous life, I had hated this man for his cowardice. Now I saw him for what he truly was, a survivor, broken by the same system that had broken my father. "I am not here to judge you," I said. "I am here to ask for your help." He laughed, a bitter sound. "My help I have already given Zhao Xian, everything he wanted. I have no power left." "You have your eyes," I said. "And your ears. You know the names of his agents. You know the shape of his schemes. You know that he is using Ling Jie to infiltrate Princess Yujing's confidence, and that once he has the princess, he will control the emperor's ear." The minister's face went pale. "How do you know this?" "Because I have seen it happen," I said. "Not in the way you think, but I have seen it. And I know that if we do not stop him, it will not be just my family that falls. It will be the entire empire. The rebellions, the famines, the war. All of it follows from Zhao Xian's greed." He stared at me, his hands gripping the edge of his desk. I could see the war in his eyes, the instinct to hide warring with the ghost of my father's friendship. "What do you want from me?" he asked at last. "Information. And protection. I need to know where Zhao Xian is holding his private meetings. I need to know who else in the capital is in his pocket. And I need you to delay the princess's decree recognizing Ling Jie as my clan's representative. Buy me time." The minister rose and walked to the window, his back to me. "I am putting my life in your hands," he said quietly. "If Zhao Xian discovers I am helping you, then you will lose your life. But if you do not help me, you will lose it anyway. In the war that is coming, there are no survivors on the side of silence." He turned to face me. For the first time, I saw a glimmer of the man my father had loved. "The meetings are held at the Pavilion of the Rising Moon," he said. "Every 5th night. Zhao Xian's inner circle gathers there. They discuss the movements of the northern armies, the manipulation of grain prices, the names of officials who can be bought or broken. And the princess, she is being courted through Ling Jie. Your cousin has offered her a marriage alliance with the Zhao family. If the princess marries into Zhao Xian's line, his influence over the throne will become absolute." My blood ran cold. In my previous life, this had been the final move, the marriage that sealed our doom. I had not known about it until the announcement was made, when it was already too late. Now I had weeks, perhaps days, to prevent it. "Thank you," I said, rising. "I will not forget this." The minister caught my wrist as I turned to leave. "Your father once told me that the plum blossom blooms in the harshest winter because it knows the spring will come." He was always a fool for poetry. His eyes were bright with unshed tears. But he was also the bravest man I knew. I see his courage in you. I left through the back gate, my heart pounding. The pieces were beginning to align. I knew where Zhao Xian gathered his forces. I knew his endgame. But knowing and stopping were very different things. At that night, I wrote a second letter, this one to my mother. I told her about Ling Jie's movements, about Elder Chen's betrayal, about the murder of the servant who had released my cousin from confinement. I told her that Zhao Xian was not just a political rival, but a man with imperial ambitions. And I told her that I was going to destroy him. I sent the letter with Mei, this time using a different messenger. Then I sat alone in the dim light of my room and waited. The dawn came gray and cold. I had not slept. My mind churned with strategies, contingencies, traps. I thought of the pavilion of the rising moon, a pleasure house frequented by high officials, the perfect place for secret meetings. I thought of Zhao Xian, sitting in his private chambers, plotting the destruction of my family. I thought of Ling Jie, whispering poison in the princess's ear. And I thought of my father, who had died not knowing that his daughter would one day rise from the ashes of her own death to avenge him. A sharp knock came at my door. I opened it to find Mei, her face flushed and her eyes wide. "Lady Ling," she gasped, "the matriarch has arrived. She is in the capital. She came herself." I stared at her, stunned. My mother, the cold, distant woman who had never left the clan compound in her entire adult life. She had come to the capital. She had received my letter. And she had answered. "Where is she?" I demanded. "She is at the Imperial Guest House. She sent a messenger. She demands to see you immediately." I laughed, a sharp, ragged sound that surprised even me. My mother had always been a woman of calculation, not sentiment. But she had not sent a curt command. She had not summoned me back to the compound. She had come to me. For the first time since my rebirth, I felt the weight of my despair begin to lift. I was no longer fighting alone. "Prepare my formal robes," I told Mei. "I am going to see my mother." And then, I would plan the destruction of Zhao Xian. I had expected my mother to be installed in one of the Imperial Guest House's grand pavilions, surrounded by servants and silk screens. Instead, I found her in a small, austere chamber at the far end of the compound, her only attendant a single elderly maid who had served her since before I was born. The room was bare of ornament, the windows shuttered against the morning light. My mother sat at a low table, a cup of tea cooling before her, her face unreadable. "Sit," she said. Not looking up, I obeyed, settling onto the cushion across from her. The silence stretched between us, thick and heavy. I could hear the distant clatter of the capital waking beyond the walls, but here, in this small room, the world felt suspended. "You sent me a letter," my mother said at last, her voice flat. "A letter claiming that the Minister of Rights is in league with Zhao Xian, that my cousin is plotting to marry into his family, and that a servant in my own household was murdered to facilitate Ling Jie's escape. You expect me to believe all of this on the word of a daughter who, a week ago, was weeping over a broken engagement." I met her gaze. "I expect you to believe it because you have already verified it. You would not have come to the capital otherwise." Her eyes flickered, a tiny crack in the porcelain mask. She had verified it. That was why she was here. She had seen the dead servant's marks, had traced the correspondence between Ling Jie and the Zhao household, had uncovered the threads I had only begun to pull. "Tell me how you knew," she said. "Tell me how you knew about the hairpin, the forged ledgers, the servant." A woman does not simply acquire this knowledge overnight. I had prepared for this question. In my previous life, I had been a poor liar, my emotions too close to the surface. But death had taught me the value of careful truth. "I had a dream," I said. A dream so vivid it felt like memory. I saw our clan destroyed, every single branch, every innocent child. I saw Ling Jie's hand in it. I saw Elder Chen's head roll in the dirt. And I saw you, Mother, your blood staining the white walls of your chambers. My mother's face went white. Her hand, resting on the table, began to tremble. "You are saying you foresaw the future," she said slowly. "I am saying I saw one possible future," I corrected. "The one that awaits us if we do nothing." The dream was so real that when I woke, I knew exactly which ledgers were forged, exactly where the hairpin was hidden, exactly which servant would betray us. I do not understand why this vision came to me. I only know that I could not ignore it. It was a lie wrapped in truth. I had not dreamed it. I had lived it. But my mother was a woman of logic, not mysticism. She would accept a prophetic dream more readily than the impossible truth of my rebirth. She was silent for a long moment. Then she reached into her sleeve and withdrew a folded document, placing it on the table between us. This arrived at the compound the day after you left. A letter from the princess's household, requesting Ling Jie's presence at court. It was dated 3 days before you exposed her. She had been corresponding with the princess for weeks. I felt a surge of vindication. I had not imagined the accelerated timeline. Zhao Xian had been preparing this move long before I intervened. The servant who let her leave, my mother continued, was found dead in the garden pond, as you said. The physician who examined her body reported bruises on her wrists and a broken collarbone. She did not drown. She was drowned. And Elder Qin, my mother's lips tightened. He disappeared the night before you arrived in the capital. His residence was empty. His accounts were cleared. He is either with Zhao Xian or running from him. Either way, he is no longer our concern. I absorbed this information. Elder Qin was either a valuable ally to Zhao Xian or a loose end being eliminated. Either option gave me an opening. Mother, I said, leaning forward, I need your help. Zhao Xian holds meetings at the pavilion of the Rising Moon every 5th night. His inner circle gathers there to plan the manipulation of grain prices, the movement of northern armies, the placement of loyalists in key positions. If I can intercept one of those meetings, you will be killed, my mother interrupted. The pavilion is guarded by Zhao Xian's private soldiers. You cannot simply walk in. I do not plan to walk in. I plan to be invited. She stared at me, her brow furrowed. Explain. Zhao Xian does not know what I know. He thinks I am a desperate woman trying to salvage her reputation. He does not know that I have the Minister of Rights as an informant, or that you have come to the capital, or that I am aware of his endgame. If I present myself to him as a woman seeking protection from her family's wrath, he will see an opportunity, a way to control the Ling family from within. My mother's eyes widened. You are proposing to become his spy. I am proposing to become his perceived spy. I corrected. I will feed him information that leads him toward his own destruction. I will make him believe I am a pawn while I maneuver myself into the center of his operation. The silence that followed was excruciating. I watched my mother's face, searching for any sign of approval, of understanding. She had always been cold, distant, more concerned with the clan's reputation than her children's lives. But I had seen her future, her blood on those white walls. I knew she was capable of sacrifice. You are asking me to let you walk into a den of wolves, she said at last. I am asking you to trust me, I replied. Just this once. She rose abruptly and walked to the window, pushing open the shutters. The morning light spilled in, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way her hands gripped the windowsill. When your father died, she said quietly, not turning around, I thought I had lost everything. But I still had the clan. I still had you. I buried my grief in duty because I had no other choice. I did not love you the way a mother should. I loved you the way a general loves a soldier. As a tool, a weapon, a necessary piece of the larger strategy. I had known this. I had felt it every day of my previous life. But hearing her speak it aloud was like a wound reopening. I am telling you this, she continued, because I need you to understand that when I say I am proud of you, it is not a general speaking to a soldier. It is a mother speaking to her daughter. I came to the capital not because I verified your claims, but because I was terrified. I was terrified of losing you. I have already lost so much. I will not lose you as well. I felt tears prick at my eyes. In my previous life, she had died before we could speak these words. I had carried the weight of her coldness to the pyre, believing she had never loved me. But here she was, standing in the morning light, confessing her heart to me. I am not going to die, I said, rising and crossing to her. I have already died once, in my dream. I know exactly what to avoid. She turned to face me, her eyes wet. For the first time in my memory, she reached out and touched my face. "You are so like him," she whispered. "Your father would have done the same thing. He would have charged headlong into danger, believing he could outwit fate." "Then let me honor him," I said. "Let me finish what he started." She pulled me into an embrace, sudden and fierce. I felt the years of distance collapse between us, replaced by something raw and urgent. She held me like I might disappear, like I was already ash in her arms. "Tell me what you need," she said against my hair. "Tell me, and I will give it to you." I pulled back and met her eyes. "I need you to publicly disown me." She recoiled as if I had struck her. "What? I need to be seen as a pariah," I said, my voice steady despite the pain in my chest. "Zhao Xian will never trust a woman who has the support of her clan. But a woman who has been cast out, who has nothing and no one, that woman he will see as desperate, and desperate women are easy to manipulate. You will announce that I have brought shame to the House of Ling, that my actions are beyond forgiveness. You will strip me of my title, my inheritance, my name." My mother's face was pale. "And then I will go to Zhao Xian and offer him my services. I will tell him that I want revenge against the family that abandoned me. He will believe it because he will see the public humiliation, the very real anger in my eyes. And once I am inside his circle, I will learn everything he is planning. I will find the witnesses who can testify against him, the documents that prove his treason. And I will deliver them all to the emperor." My mother shook her head slowly. "The emperor is under Zhao Xian's influence. He will not believe a disowned daughter over his favored minister." "He will if the evidence is overwhelming," I said. "And if Princess Yujing is the one who delivers it." My mother's eyes widened. "The princess you would involve her in this. She is the key," I said. "Zhao Xian is courting her through Ling Jia. If I can turn her against him, if I can prove that he is using her as a pawn, then she will have no choice but to expose him. The emperor may ignore a commoner's accusations, but he cannot ignore his own daughter." My mother was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "You have thought this through." "I have had nothing else to think about," I said. She turned back to the window, her hands gripping the sill once more. "I will issue the proclamation tonight. You will be publicly disowned at dawn. I will not be gentle with you. I cannot afford to be." "I understand." She did not turn around. "Go now." Before I changed my mind. I left the room without looking back. I could not afford to let her see the tears streaming down my face. May was waiting for me in the courtyard, her face anxious. "Lady Ling, what happened?" "The matriarch is going to destroy me," I said, wiping my eyes with my sleeve. "And I am going to let her. May, I need you to stay with her. She will need someone she trusts." "Lady Ling, I cannot leave you. You must." I gripped her hands tightly. "In 3 days, when Zhao Xian's men come to recruit me, I need to look completely alone. If you are with me, they will suspect a trap. But if I am alone, desperate, broken, they will see only a tool." May's eyes filled with tears. "I will not lose you again," she said, and the words hit me like a blow. Again. She had said again. In my previous life, she had died for me. In this life, I was asking her to leave me. "Promise me you will stay alive," I said. "No matter what happens. I need you to survive." She nodded, weeping openly now. "I promise, Lady Ling. I will wait for you. I will always wait for you." I released her hands and walked out of the compound. The streets were crowded now, merchants hawking their wares, children running between the stalls. I moved through them like a ghost, unseen and untethered. I had just asked my mother to destroy my reputation. I had sent away my most loyal servant. I had cut all ties to the life I knew, the life I had fought so hard to reclaim, but I had also set the trap. In 3 days, Zhao Xian would hear of the disgraced daughter of the Ling family, wandering the capital alone. He would investigate. He would find a woman with nothing left to lose, a woman whose fury burned bright enough to blind her to the danger she was walking into, He would invite me to his table. And when he did, I would smile, and I would bow, and I would whisper sweet promises of loyalty into his ear, and then I would watch him burn. The public square was packed. I had expected no less. News of a noble daughter's public disownment was the kind of spectacle that drew every idle citizen in the capital, from the silk-robed merchants to the beggars crouched in the gutters. They had gathered at dawn, filling the space before the imperial proclamation board, their faces hungry for drama. I stood on the raised wooden platform, my hands bound before me with rough hemp rope. My formal robes had been stripped away, replaced by coarse gray cotton that itched against my skin. My hair hung loose and unadorned, a deliberate symbol of my fallen state. The morning sun was harsh on my face, exposing every flaw, every sign of exhaustion. My mother stood on the other side of the platform, her back straight, her face a marble mask. She held a scroll in her hands, the proclamation that would sever me from my family forever. Her voice, when she spoke, carried across the square like a blade. By the authority of the matriarch of the House of Ling, I hereby declare Ling Wei, daughter of the late Ling Feng, to be stripped of all titles, all privileges, and all claim to the Ling family name. She has brought shame upon our ancestors through her reckless conduct, her failure in duty, and her willful defiance of this household's authority. From this day forward, she is no daughter of mine. She is no sister to her kin. She is nothing. The crowd gasped. I kept my head high, my expression carefully blank. Inside, I felt every word like a lash. But I had asked for this. I had begged for this. I scanned the crowd as my mother continued reading the long list of my alleged crimes. Near the back, half hidden in the shadow of a vegetable cart, I saw him. A man in plain brown robes, his face unremarkable, his eyes fixed on me with sharp interest. He was not a vendor. His hands were too clean, his posture too rigid. Zhao Xian's man. Watching. Assessing. I let my shoulders slump. I let my chin drop slightly, as if the weight of my disgrace was too heavy to bear. I let a single tear roll down my cheek, not manufactured, but real, drawn from the genuine pain of this moment. The pain made the performance convincing that my mother finished the proclamation and rolled up the scroll.
She did not look at me.
She could not. I saw her hands trembling slightly, the only crack in her armor. Begone, she said coldly. Let no one of the House of Ling offer you shelter or comfort. You are dead to us. The guards untied my hands and shoved me off the platform. I stumbled, nearly falling, and the crowd parted around me like I carried a plague. I heard the whispers, disgraced, shameful. Serves her right. I kept my head down and walked, one slow step at a time, out of the square and into the narrow streets beyond, and I walked until I was certain I was not being followed. Then I ducked into an alley and pressed my back against the cold stone wall, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The performance was over, but the real work had just begun. I found a cheap inn near the city's eastern gate, a place frequented by traveling merchants and dubious characters who asked no questions. I paid for a room with the last of my hidden coins and collapsed onto the thin mattress. I had not slept properly in days, and my body was screaming for rest. But I could not afford to sleep. Not yet. I spent the next 2 days wandering the capital's lower districts, letting myself be seen. I begged for food at the temple gates. I sold my mother's jade bracelet, a fake I had prepared for this purpose, to a pawnbroker for a pittance. I made sure I was noticed by the right people, the informants, the spies, the men who sold secrets to the highest bidder. I wanted the story of my fall to reach Zhao Xian's ears not as a rumor, but as a confirmed fact, witnessed by a dozen reliable sources. On the evening of the second day, I was sitting in a tea house near the docks, nursing a single cup of lukewarm brew, when a shadow fell across my table. I looked up to find the brown-robed man from the square standing before me. Ling Wei, he said. It was not a question. He knew exactly who I was. I have no name anymore. I replied, my voice hollow. I am nothing. Nothing is precisely what I am looking for. He slid into the seat across from me. His face was sharp, his eyes calculating. I am aware of your situation. I am also aware that you possess certain skills that were wasted on a family that abandoned you. My master is looking for someone with your talents. I let a flicker of bitter hope cross my face. Your master, Minister Zhao Xian, he said. He has heard of your fall. He is sympathetic to the plight of those who have been wronged by their own blood. He would like to offer you an opportunity. I laughed, a broken, ragged sound. An opportunity. I have no family, no money, no reputation. What could I possibly offer Minister Zhao? Your mind, the man said. Your knowledge of the Ling clan's affairs. Your willingness to do what is necessary to reclaim your place in the world. I was silent for a long moment, letting the bait dangle. Then I nodded slowly. Tell me where to go. The pavilion of the rising moon rose from the eastern quarter, like a forgotten dream. Its curved roofs were painted in shades of vermilion and gold, its windows glowing with lantern light that spilled out into the night. I had passed this place 100 times in my previous life, never knowing that within its gilded walls, my family's fate was being sealed. The brown-robed man led me through the main entrance and up a winding staircase to a private chamber on the 3rd floor. The room was sumptuously decorated, silk screens, embroidered cushions, a low table laden with wine and delicacies. But my eyes were drawn to the figure seated at the head of the table. Zhao Xian was not what I expected. He was small, almost delicate, with a scholar's face and soft, manicured hands. His smile was warm, his eyes gentle. He looked like a kindly uncle, not the architect of empires. But I knew better. I had seen the devastation he could wrought. Lady Ling Wei, he said, rising to greet me. His voice was smooth as honey. Or, do you prefer simply Wei? Now I understand you have been through a difficult ordeal. I dropped into a low bow, my forehead nearly touching the floor. This humble one has nothing but her gratitude for Minister Zhao's generosity. I am nothing. I am less than nothing. But if you give me purpose, I will serve you until my dying breath. He chuckled softly and helped me rise. No need for such dramatic displays. I am not a man who demands groveling. I am a man who values loyalty. And I can see, in your eyes, that you are a woman who understands the value of loyalty. I met his gaze, letting him see the raw hunger there, the hunger for revenge, for purpose, for a second chance. I understand that the world is cruel to those who have no power, I said. I have no power left. But if I can help you gain more power, then perhaps I can protect myself from ever being cast aside again. He nodded slowly, as if this was exactly what he had expected to hear. You are more perceptive than I was led to believe. Tell me, what do you know of your cousin Ling Jie's relationship with Princess Yujing? I hesitated, feigning reluctance. I know they have grown close. I know Ling Jie has been feeding the princess information about the Ling clan's wealth and influence. I know she is positioning herself to become the princess's closest confidant. And do you know what she is planning beyond that? I shook my head slowly. I only know that she is ambitious. She always has been. But I do not know the full scope of her designs. Zhao Xian smiled, a thin, cold expression. She is planning to marry the princess into my family, he said. Through her, I will have a direct line to the emperor's ear. The north will be pacified. The treasury will be stabilized. And those who have stood against me will find their positions untenable. I let a flicker of fear cross my face. And what of the Ling family? My mother, my clan, they will have a choice, Zhao Xian said smoothly. They can align themselves with me, or they can fall. I am not a man who enjoys destruction for its own sake. But I am also not a man who tolerates resistance. I understood the message. He was offering me a chance to save my family by helping him destroy them. It was the perfect trap, designed to appeal to a woman who had been publicly humiliated and wanted to prove her worth. In my previous life, I would have fallen for it entirely. But now I saw the threads. Minister Zhao, I said, bowing my head, I am yours to command. Whatever you need, information, access, influence, I will provide it. I only ask that when the Ling family falls, you allow me to be the one to deliver the final blow. I want to see their faces. I want them to know it was me. Zhao Xian's smile widened. Now that is loyalty I can believe in. He gestured for me to sit, and we spent the next hour discussing the details of my new position. I was to report to his household every morning, provide him with updates on any Ling family activity I could recall, and serve as a discreet presence at the court gatherings where he needed eyes and ears. In return, he would give me a modest allowance, a place to live, and the promise of revenge. As I left the pavilion that night, I felt the first stirrings of genuine hope. I was inside. I had his trust, or at least his interest. The first step had been taken, but as I walked through the empty streets, I saw a shadow detach itself from a doorway and fall into step beside me. I tensed, ready to run, but a familiar voice stopped me cold. Lady Ling. I turned to find General Han standing in the moonlight, his face drawn and weary. The man who had broken my engagement, who had shattered my heart in my previous life. But I had not expected to see him here. I had not expected to see him at all. General Han, I said flatly. What do you want? He stepped closer, his eyes searching mine. I heard about the disownment. I came to see if you were all right. I laughed. A bitter, hollow sound. You came to see if I was all right after you humiliated me in front of the entire court after you chose Ling Jie over me. I made a mistake, he said quietly. I see that now. I was manipulated just as you were. Zhao Xian arranged the engagement with Ling Jie to isolate you. He wanted to break you, to make you vulnerable. And I played right into his hands. I stared at him, stunned. In my previous life, I had never heard these words. Han had married Ling Jie, and he had died with her, poisoned by the same plot that had consumed them both. I had always assumed he was complicit in her schemes. But the man before me looked genuinely remorseful. What do you want? I asked again, my voice softer. I want to help you, he said. I know what you're doing. I know you are working against Zhao Xian. I have seen the signs, the public disownment, the sudden interest in his affairs, the way you have made yourself visible in the lower districts. You are not a broken woman seeking revenge. You are a woman hunting her enemies. I felt a chill run down my spine. He was too perceptive. He was a threat. Go back to your wife, I said coldly. Go back to Ling Jie. I have nothing to say to you. I am not married to her, he said. I called off the engagement. After I realized what they had done, I refused to go through with it. I have been trying to find you for days. I did not know what to believe. The man who had broken my heart was standing before me, offering me his allegiance. It could be a trap. It could be Zhao Xian's doing. But something in his eyes, that haunted, weary look, made me pause. The Plume Blossom Festival, I said slowly. The princess will be there in 3 days. Zhao Xian will be there too, as will Ling Jie. If you truly want to help me, you will find a way to be there as well. And you will do exactly as I say. He nodded without hesitation. I will be there. He turned and disappeared into the night, leaving me alone on the empty street. I stood there for a long moment, my heart pounding, trying to decide if I had just made the biggest mistake of my life. But the die was cast. I was inside Zhao Xian's circle. I had an informant in the enemy camp. And in 3 days, I would have Princess Yujing. The hunt was about to begin. The morning of the Plum Blossom Festival dawned clear and cold, the sky a pale winter blue that promised no warmth. I stood in the narrow room Zhao Xian had provided, a modest chamber in his household servants' quarters, deliberately humble to maintain my cover. I had not been given silk or jewels. I had been given a plain gray dress and a single plum blossom hairpin, a mockery of the festival's theme. I dressed slowly, my fingers numb from the cold. In my previous life, I had attended this festival as a guest, seated among the noble women, sipping wine and pretending to admire the blossoms. I had not known then that it was the night everything would change. The night Ling Jie's engagement to General Han was announced. The night my mother began to withdraw from public life. The night the first whispers of our family's ruin started to circulate. This time, I would not be a guest. I would be a ghost, moving through the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. A knock came at my door. I opened it to find the brown-robed man, his face impassive. Minister Zhao requests your presence. He wishes you to accompany him to the festival. I nodded and followed him through the winding corridors of the Zhao household. Zhao Xian was waiting in the main courtyard, surrounded by a retinue of servants and guards. He was dressed in robes of deep purple, the color of royalty, a deliberate provocation. His smile when he saw me was warm, almost paternal. "Lady Wei," he said, using the name he had assigned me. "You look appropriate. I trust you are ready for your first assignment." I bowed my head. "I am ready to serve, Minister Zhao." He gestured for me to walk beside him as we made our way to the waiting sedan chairs. "I have a simple task for you today. Ling Jie will be at the festival, and she will be accompanied by Princess Yijing. I want you to observe them, listen to their conversations, report back to me anything of interest. That is all." I asked, feigning disappointment. "That is all for now," he said smoothly. "Trust must be earned, Lady Wei. I do not give my full confidence to anyone until they have proven themselves. Prove yourself today, and you will be given greater responsibilities." I bit back the retort that rose to my lips. He was testing me, watching for signs of defiance or desperation. I gave him neither. I merely nodded and stepped into my sedan chair, letting the curtains fall around me. The journey to the spring pavilion was short but bumpy. I used the time to center myself, to push aside the fear and the memories that threatened to overwhelm me. I had been here before. I had died here, in a sense, died to my old life, my old self. Today, I would be reborn. The festival grounds were even more opulent than I remembered. Silk banners hung from every tree, their colors bright against the winter gray. Plum blossoms carpeted the paths, their petals crushed underfoot by the hundreds of guests who had come to pay homage to Princess Yijing. Musicians played in the pavilions, their melodies drifting on the cold air. The scent of wine and roasted meat mingled with the perfume of the blossoms. I slipped away from Zhao Xian's retinue as soon as we arrived, melting into the crowd. I was not so naive as to think I was unobserved. There were eyes everywhere, Zhao Xian's spies and others besides. But I was skilled at moving unseen, a talent I had developed in the long years of my previous life, when I had been forced to navigate the court's treacherous waters alone. I spotted Ling Jie almost immediately. She was seated on a raised dais beside Princess Yijing, their heads bent together in intimate conversation. My cousin was dressed in robes of pale pink, her hair adorned with gold and pearl, her face a mask of sweet innocence. She looked every inch the devoted companion, the loyal friend. But I saw the way her eyes flickered across the crowd, cataloging faces, calculating advantages. She was hunting just as I was. General Han was there too, standing at the periphery of the main pavilion, his face grim. He had kept his promise. I felt a flicker of something, gratitude, perhaps, or the ghost of an old affection. But I pushed it away. I could not afford to trust him fully.
Not yet.
I waited until the princess rose to tour the gardens, Ling Jie at her side. The crowd parted for them, the guests bowing and scraping, desperate to catch the royal eye. I followed at a distance, keeping to the edges of the path. I watched as Ling Jie leaned close to the princess, whispering something that made the girl laugh. I watched as she guided the princess toward a secluded grove, away from the main party. This was the moment. In my previous life, Ling Jie had used this private audience to secure the princess's approval for the marriage alliance. I did not know the details. I had been too busy drowning in my own grief to pay attention. But I knew the outcome. The princess had been convinced, and the alliance had been sealed. I could not let that happen again, that I circled around the grove, approaching from the opposite side. The bushes were thick here, the plum trees old and gnarled, their branches offering cover. I crouched low and listened. "And the Zhao family is the most powerful in the capital," Ling Jie was saying, her voice smooth and persuasive. "With their support, Your Highness could achieve anything. The Emperor would have to listen to you. The court would have to respect you." Princess Yujing's voice was hesitant. "But my father trusts Minister Zhao. He has always been loyal." "Loyal," Ling Jie laughed, a soft, tinkling sound. "Your Highness, Minister Zhao is loyal only to himself. He has been manipulating the emperor for years, feeding him lies, steering him toward policies that benefit the Zhao family. If your Highness marries into that family, you will not gain power. You will become a pawn." I froze. This was not what I had expected. Ling Jie was not promoting the alliance. She was warning against it. Then why does your family support him? The princess asked, confusion in her voice. My family does not support him, Ling Jie said quickly. My cousin, Ling Wei, was punished for opposing him. She tried to expose his schemes, and he destroyed her. That is why she was disowned, not because of her incompetence, but because she threatened him. I am telling you this because I care about your highness. I do not want to see you make the same mistake. I felt the world tilt around me. Ling Jie was working against Zhao Xian. She was not his ally. She was his enemy. Everything I had known, everything I had believed, had been wrong. I stumbled back, my mind reeling. In my previous life, Ling Jie had been Zhao Xian's co-conspirator. She had been the architect of our family's destruction. But here, in this moment, she was warning the princess against him. She was protecting her. Even as I had planned to destroy her, could I have been wrong about everything? I retreated from the grove, my thoughts in chaos. I found a quiet corner of the gardens and sat down on a stone bench, my hands trembling. The memories of my previous life flooded back. Ling Jie's scheming, her lies, her manipulation. But were those things real? Or had I been so blinded by my own suffering that I had seen enemies where there were none? I was still sitting there when a shadow fell across me. I looked up to find General Han, his face concerned. Wei, he said softly, using the name I had taken. Are you alright? You look as if you have seen a ghost. I have, I said, my voice hollow. I have seen a ghost, and it was me. He sat down beside me, his presence solid and grounding. What do you mean? I told him. I told him about the vision, the dream, the future I had seen. I told him about Ling Jie's poisoning, Elder Chen's execution, my mother's blood on the white walls. I told him about my own death, the fire, the ashes. I did not tell him about my rebirth. He would not have believed that. But I told him enough. She was the enemy, I said, my voice breaking. In my vision, she was the enemy. But now I have heard her speak, and she is warning the princess against Zhao Xian. She is trying to protect her. Everything I thought I knew is wrong. Han was silent for a long moment. Then he spoke, his voice thoughtful. Perhaps the vision was not wrong, he said. Perhaps it was incomplete. You saw Ling Jie's schemes, but you did not see her motivations. You saw her actions, but you did not see the larger picture. I stared at him. What are you saying? I am saying that Zhao Xian is a master manipulator, he said. He uses people, twists them, breaks them. It is possible that Ling Jie was working with him in your vision because she had no choice. It is possible that she was just as much a pawn as you were. The pieces began to click into place. Ling Jie's betrayal, her rise to power, her marriage to Han, it had all seemed so straightforward. But what if it had been a survival strategy? What if she had aligned herself with Zhao Xian because he had threatened her family, her life? And now she was trying to break free. I rose abruptly, my mind made up. I need to speak with her. I need to hear the truth from her own lips. Han stood as well, his hand catching my wrist. Wei, be careful. If she is still working for Zhao Xian, this could be a trap. Then it is a trap I must walk into, I said. I cannot fight this war alone. I need to know who is truly on my side. I left him standing in the garden and made my way back toward the grove. The princess had gone, but Ling Jie remained, standing alone among the plum blossoms, her face distant and sad. She turned as I approached, her eyes widening. Wei, she breathed. I did not expect to see you here. Neither did I said. But I heard you speaking with the princess. I heard you warn her against Zhao Xian. Ling Jie's face went pale. You were spying on me. I was protecting myself, I said. Just as you were protecting yourself. Tell me the truth, Ling Jie. Are you Zhao Xian's ally or his enemy? She stared at me for a long moment. Then, slowly, she laughed, a broken, bitter sound. I have been both, she said. I have been his ally, because I had no choice. And I have been his enemy, because I could not live with myself otherwise. Explain? I demanded. She sat down on a stone bench, gesturing for me to join her. When Zhao Xian first approached me, I was flattered. He was powerful, influential. He promised me everything: wealth, status, a place at court. I was young and foolish, and I believed him. But then I started to see the truth. He was not interested in helping me. He was interested in using me. He wanted me to infiltrate the princess's household, to manipulate her, to control her. And when I refused, he threatened me. He said he would destroy my family, my clan, everyone I loved. I felt a chill run down my spine. This was exactly what he had done to me. I became his puppet. Ling Jie continued. I did everything he asked because I was afraid. But I started looking for a way out. I started working against him, quietly, carefully. I planted the hairpin in your study to expose his connection to me, hoping you would investigate and find the truth. I did not expect you to expose me instead. I stared at her, my mind racing. The hairpin. I had assumed she had planted it to frame me, but she had planted it to expose Zhao Xian. I had been so focused on my own suffering, my own betrayal, that I had not seen the larger game. You sent the letter, I said slowly. You accelerated the timeline, brought the princess to the capital early, to give yourself more time to warn her. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I know I have done terrible things. I know I have hurt you, betrayed you. But I was trying to survive. And I am still trying to survive. I do not want to be his pawn anymore. I reached out and took her hand. The gesture surprised both of us. We are both his pawns, I said. But we do not have to be. We can be his enemies instead. Together. She looked at me, her eyes bright with hope and fear. Do you trust me? I did not hesitate.
No.
But I am willing to give you a chance. We sat there in silence, two women who had been enemies, now bound by a shared enemy. The plum blossoms fell around us like snow, silent and beautiful. And for the first time since my rebirth, I felt the weight of the future lift from my shoulders. I was not alone anymore, but as I looked across the garden, I saw a figure watching us from the shadows. The brown-robed man. Zhao Xian's spy. He had seen everything. That I rose abruptly, my heart pounding. We have been discovered, I said. We need to leave.
Now.
We ran together through the gardens, our robes tangling around our feet, our breath coming in ragged gasps. The brown-robed man was behind us, calling for guards, his voice sharp and urgent. I grabbed Ling Jie's hand and pulled her toward the main gate. We had to escape. We had to survive. The hunt was over. The war had just begun. The garden walls loomed before us, slick with frost. I pulled Ling Jie around a corner, my shoulder slamming against a stone pillar, and we tumbled into a narrow service passage used by servants to move between pavilions. Behind us, the brown-robed man shouted orders. The clatter of boots on stone, the creak of bowstrings being drawn. I pressed my back against the cold wall and dragged Ling Jie beside me. Her breath came in sharp, terrified gasps. Her elaborate hairpins had come loose, strands of black hair whipping across her face. We cannot outrun them, she whispered. They know every exit. They will seal the gates. I knew she was right. Zhao Xian's people had secured the festival grounds long before we arrived. The pretty silk banners, the laughing guests, the tinkling music. It was all a cage, and we had just walked into it. I grabbed her wrist. Then we do not run. We hide. I pulled her deeper into the service passage, past stacks of empty wine jars and discarded cooking pots. The passage twisted and narrowed until we were crawling on our hands and knees through a space barely wide enough for a single person. Dust filled my lungs. Cobwebs clung to my hair. But I knew where this led. In my previous life, I had explored these grounds during a moment of desperate escape. I remembered a small storeroom, forgotten and unused, hidden behind a false wall. I had found it by accident, and I had never told anyone about it. The passage opened into a cramped space, no larger than a closet. I pulled Ling Jie inside and slid the false wall back into place, sealing us in darkness. We sat in silence, our breathing ragged, our hearts pounding so loudly I was certain our pursuers could hear them. Minutes passed. An hour. The sounds of the hunt faded, replaced by the distant strains of music and laughter. The festival continued. Oblivious to the drama unfolding beneath its surface, Ling Jie's hand found mine in the darkness. Her fingers were cold and trembling. "Wei," she said softly, "I need to tell you something. Something I should have told you years ago." I stiffened. "What is it? When your father died," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "it was not illness. It was not age. Zhao Xian had him poisoned. He found out that your father was gathering evidence against him, documents, witness testimonies, everything needed to bring him before the emperor. Your father was going to expose him." And Zhao Xian stopped him. I felt the air leave my lungs. In my previous life, I had always believed my father died of a broken heart, worn down by court politics and the weight of his responsibilities. I had never suspected murder. "How do you know this?" I demanded. "Because I was there," she said. "I was just a girl, but I was there. I saw them bring the poison. I saw them force it down his throat. And I saw Zhao Xian smile as he watched him die." Tears streamed down my face. I had spent a decade mourning my father, believing his death was natural, an inevitable part of the cycle of life. But it had been murder. My father had been murdered, and I had not known. "Why did you not tell me?" I asked, my voice breaking. "Because I was a child," she said. "Because I was terrified. Because Zhao Xian told me that if I ever spoke of it, he would kill my mother, my brothers, everyone I loved. I kept his secret to protect my family. I have been keeping his secrets ever since." I sat in the darkness, my mind reeling. Everything I had believed was unraveling. The alliances, the betrayals, the hatreds, they had all been orchestrated by one man, a puppeteer pulling strings from the shadows. "We are going to destroy him," I said. "We are going to expose him, and we are going to watch him fall." How Ling Jie asked. "He is too powerful. He has too many allies. Even if we bring evidence to the emperor, Zhao Xian will simply deny it. He has the emperor's ear. He has the emperor's trust. He will not trust him for long," I said. "Not when his own daughter turns against him." It was a gamble, a desperate, last-ditch gamble. But it was the only move I had left. We waited until nightfall, then slipped out of our hiding place and made our way to the princess's private chambers. The guards recognized Ling Jie and allowed us entry, though their eyes narrowed with suspicion when they saw me that Princess Yujing was alone, her face pale and drawn. She had not slept. She had heard the commotion at the festival, the whispers of a hunt, of a conspiracy. She knew something was wrong. I fell to my knees before her. "Your Highness, I come to you with a confession. I have been a spy for Minister Zhao Xian. I was sent to infiltrate your household, to manipulate you, to control you. But I have seen the truth. Minister Zhao is a traitor. He murdered my father. He is plotting to overthrow the emperor. And he is using me and Ling Jie and everyone else as his pawns." Princess Yujing stared at me, her eyes wide. "You expect me to believe this. I expect you to verify it," I said. "Search his private chambers. You will find correspondence with the northern generals, proof of his plans to incite rebellion. You will find a list of officials who have been bribed or blackmailed into silence. And you will find my father's death certificate, signed by a physician who is paid to lie." She was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. "I will investigate these claims. And if I find them to be true, I will bring them before my father. But if this is a lie, if you are trying to manipulate me, I will have you executed." "I would expect nothing less," I said. The investigation took 3 days. In that time, I was confined to my quarters, guarded day and night. I did not sleep. I did not eat. I simply waited, my heart pounding with every footstep in the corridor outside my door. On the 3rd morning, the guards came for me. They escorted me through the palace, past the throne room, past the courtiers who stared at me with open curiosity. I was brought to the emperor's private study, a small, intimate chamber lined with scrolls and maps. Princess Yujing was there, her face triumphant. She held a sheaf of documents in her hands, and Zhao Xian was there too, standing before the emperor, his face pale with rage. "Your Majesty," Zhao Xian said, his voice trembling, "this woman is a liar. She has fabricated these charges to destroy me. She is a jealous, vengeful creature who cannot accept her own failures. The emperor looked at me, his eyes cold and assessing. What do you have to say for yourself, Lady Ling? I stepped forward, my heart pounding. Your Majesty, I have only one piece of evidence. It is not a document. It is not a witness. It is my life. I reached up and unpinned the plum blossom hairpin from my hair, the symbol of Zhao Xian's household, the symbol of his betrayal. I have worn this hairpin for days, I said. It was given to me by Minister Zhao himself, a symbol of my loyalty. But I wore it not as a sign of loyalty, but as a reminder that I must survive, that I must fight, that I must expose the truth. I offer it to you now, not as evidence of my guilt, but as evidence of my commitment. I am willing to die to prove the truth of my words. I am willing to sacrifice everything to see justice done. I drove the hairpin into the palm of my hand. Blood welled up, dripping onto the marble floor. I felt no pain. I felt only clarity, Zhao Xian screamed. The emperor stared. Princess Yujing covered her mouth with her hands, and in that moment, I knew I had won. The emperor rose from his throne. He walked toward me, his eyes fixed on the blood dripping from my hand. He reached out and took the hairpin from me. Minister Zhao, he said quietly, you are under arrest. The guards seized Zhao Xian, dragging him from the room. His protests echoed down the corridor until they faded into silence. The emperor turned back to me, his face unreadable. Lady Lingwei, he said, you have shown extraordinary courage. The House of Ling will be restored to full honor, and you will be given a position at court as a reward for your loyalty. I bowed my head. Thank you, Your Majesty. But I ask for only one thing. What is that? I looked at Ling Jie, who stood in the corner of the room, her face streaked with tears. I ask that my cousin be pardoned. She was a pawn just as I was. She has suffered enough. The emperor nodded slowly. Granted. Ling Jie rushed toward me, pulling me into an embrace. We wept together, two women who had been enemies, now bound by blood and survival. The sun was setting outside the window, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. I looked out at the city below, at the rooftops and the gardens and the distant hills. The world was still there. The world was still beautiful that I had survived. My family had survived. And I had found a sister in the woman I had once hated. You know, I said to Ling Jie as we walked out of the palace together, I still do not entirely trust you. She laughed, a sound of pure joy. Neither do I. But that is what makes us sisters. We walked into the sunset, our arms linked, our futures unwritten. The plum blossoms had fallen, but the trees would bloom again, and so would we.